When we talk about remedial therapy, it is one of the interventions that we take it up in the area of academics. For example, if we are talking about physiotherapy, so that works on the physical, the muscles and the bones. Likewise, remedials takes care of the child's academic domain. A child who has to attend a remedial session, people would think that the child is going for tuition classes. Okay. However, it is very different because the tuition teacher would teach the child what is currently going in his school academics. But on the other hand, if we see remedial education, so it is a therapy that is trying to bridge a gap between what the child um, is at, I mean, the current level the child is at, and how much level the child needs to walk.
What do you think parents should first know about autism and how should they understand autism? So, welcome both of you to the Dolly Show today. I'm so glad that you both are here. So, yes, we have our professional who is Dr. Mihir Parekh. Welcome, sir. We are truly honored to have you with us. And yes, we have our parent with us who is Swati Pai ma'am. So, welcome to the Dolly Show, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
And yes, another new topic that we will be discussing today. So, let's start with you, sir. Remedial therapy. What exactly is it and how is it beneficial for children on the autism spectrum?
All right. So when we talk about remedial therapy, it is one of the interventions that we take it up in the area of academics. So to uh, to relate it, for example, if we are talking about physiotherapy, so that works on the physical, the muscles and the bones. Likewise, remedials takes care of the child's academic domain. So it is often misconstrued with the child's school's ongoing academics, where a child who has to attend a remedial session, people would think that the child is going for tuition classes. Okay. However, it is very different because the tuition teacher would teach the child what is currently going in his school academics. But on the other hand, if we see remedial education, so it is a therapy that is trying to bridge a gap between what the child um, is at, I mean, the current level the child is at, and how much level the child needs to walk to reach the desired goal of his level, which he's expected to perform. So it's just not basically English or other languages, but it is also English, math, and functional academics, especially with a child having autism, where things which are learned or taught in a classroom setup is very different as compared to what the child learns more one on one in a different way with different teaching aids, more visual in nature, depending on the learning style of the child, especially in children who are in the spectrum of autism, where predominantly the learning style is visual. So the teaching aids are designed according to the child's needs levels, and that's how each and every goal is reached in the child's learning way and capacity.
Oh, this is interesting because even I was of the opinion that probably the school, whatever you learn, is replaced by remedial therapy. So, this is a new learning for me as well. And definitely, I want to know more for sure how exactly that works. Before that, ma'am, I would love to know about your journey.
Right. So, Shardul is the name of my son. So, he is right now, he's 11 and a half almost. And we detected the autism for him when he was around 3.5, 4 years old. Right. So, from then, of course, he was in preschool. So, that's when the teachers said that he's not making eye contact and he's not following instructions or he's not able to talk to other kids in the class. So, that's where she said that we need to go and look at meet a child psychiatrist and understand what is the issue. So that's how it all started actually. So then we met Theo's doctor, and then the doctor explained to us about what is autism. She actually took a test There was like a questionnaire which she sat down with the parent, with us first, me and my husband first. And then she sat down with my son. I mean, like we were out of the room, she was alone with him. And then through play, through talking to him, quite some time she spent with him. And then she came to her results and told us, "Ki, yes, he is on the autism spectrum. And no, this is very, is so much of a lag is there from the normal milestones that we see in kids his age." And that's how it started basically.
So ma'am spoke about psychologist because that was the first person she went to. So as per you and as per psychology, what do you think parents should first know about autism and how should they understand autism?
So, when it comes about developmental milestones, all the parents, I think it's a motherly instinct which the mother starts understanding that there is something wrong with my child. My child is not growing the way he has to grow. So I'm sure at the back of her mind, she would keep on double checking it with maybe her friends or maybe some professionals or a regular pediatrician that whether I'm going right or not. So I believe here even the pediatrician's role and guidance would count a lot because I think that's the first person we go and meet. So once the parent is aware that there is some challenge with the child, so it's important that they start checking the red flags. So when I say red flags, the red flags would mean a basic social smile. The child is not giving. The child is not giving eye contacts or maybe giving, but the eye contacts are quite fleeting. They are not sustaining. The child picks up late on the speech. So that's also a very primary milestone. And some basic social behaviors which a child who's neurotypical would show that, being very close to the family members, would cry, run behind the parent. So all those things, when the parent sees that that is missing, it's a kind of an alarm where they need to see either a developmental pediatrician or a psychologist to figure out that what is the challenge.
Got you. So you think early intervention is really very important and picking these red flags early is also one of the
Extremely important. So once these signals are picked up, then they are directed to the right professionals, and then, as you rightly mentioned, the early intervention begins, which creates wonders.
So you did mention that, speech comes in late. So verbally, they don't express much. So how do you think that, how can we bring out those expressions and how do parents understand that, what are these children trying to express if they are really not well verbal? So what are your views on that?
So I do not say that children with autism do not get speech, right? The speech is present in many of the cases, but they are, so when you talk about a demand speech, uh, vis-a-vis a need-based speech.
Sure.
So children with autism will have more of a need-based speech and conversation. So there, the parents should try to encourage more that they become more and more verbose about whatever they are wanting to express. One, in case if the child is non-verbal and I'm sure it's the mother who is primary who understands everything with all the signals that the child shows up. But there has to be different ways where if the child has good receptive language skills, which means that the child is understanding all the instructions of the parents but not trying to communicate. So somewhere uh, a, a decrease in uh, uh, the gestural prompt or maybe trying to not understand the child what the child is trying to communicate. So that's how the parent pushes the child to speak something. More and more of picture talks at this juncture would help, where the child is into a particular place, those kind of pictures are picked. The parent keeps on talking about, oh, we've been to this place, you were there, you were playing on this slide. And the child has a lot of words in his vocabulary, but is not trying to make it more pragmatic, which means more having it more use in the social setup.
Okay.
So I think there the parent has to keep on encouraging the child to talk more instead of understanding all the things through his gestures. So also there is a window period given to children with autism where children till the age of 8 years they pick up on their speech, and then the remaining years are attributed or given to language development. So in case if the parent should keep on pushing the child visit a speech therapist or speech language pathologist, that how much is the scope where my child can talk. Also, the kind of environment that the parent has to build around the child matters a lot. It is just not the role of the speech language pathologist completely. I believe personally that the use of something called as the AAC, which is the alternative augmentative communication, according to me, should come later, wherein the pathologist or the speech language pathologist do not see, um, the speech coming in anymore. And now the child is struggling. There are a lot of behavioral challenges that have come up. The child needs to communicate in some way. So there, the AAC, I believe, should come into play. Otherwise, children get so tuned to use AAC, so then they don't take an effort to talk. Is my standing.
Very well put across. So let's speak about behavioral issues. You have faced challenges in regards to the daily chores, be it bathing or other kind of challenges. If you could just tell us, and how did you overcome those challenges, ma'am?
Yeah. So, most of his challenges was like in the bathing part and brushing his teeth because he had some amount of mouth sensitivity also. So initially, of course, we didn't understand that when we were just starting on this journey. But then when we went to we had the speech therapy started when we diagnosed him. And then she explained to us that a typical type of brush needs to be used, how it needs to be, how he needs to be like first do it with the finger brush so that he's comfortable with the texture. The sensory issues should be like kind of, first taken care of. And then, of course, you can start using the regular brush. But of course, the time to control or rather put this into place is long, and we definitely need to have a lot of patience with us so that we understand him also. Because what happens is like typically school going time, right? So the time is very short, and then in that short time we have to do like a lot of things. We have to go to office, and he has to go to school, and then all these issues happen. So at that point, I feel we get frustrated, and then he shout, and then he cries, and so all of that, of course, with time is what I have also learned that having that patience to understand what he is going through is very important. So I think patience is understanding it from his point of view. That is the most important thing that any parent will have to definitely remember. And of course, then there are ways and means. Like brushing, later on I found out visual is the way he learns, right? So then each step of brushing, okay, take the toothbrush. This is a toothbrush, this is a toothpaste, and then you take it and you put it, and then you put it in a mouth. Then you go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he's good with maths, okay? So numbers is what you connect with. So it made you the
Number.
the scale. Yeah. Right. So then you do that. And then again you have pictures. So we had pictures also. We had flashcards. Okay. So you do this first, then you do this, then you do this, then you do this, and that's the entire thing. Okay. So same way, of course, even now we still have some problems with her. But then yeah, it's much under control, and
Also, he had difficulty in writing.
yes. So when he was like in the normal school, he had put him there since KG till up till third standard. He was there, but he was not writing there, right? So he had a shadow teacher, but then mostly it was oral. Like all his exams and also the school used to take orally on him. But of course, after a point of time, they need to start writing, right? Because there was no problem physically. But
The human, what do you call, uh, set,
yeah, set we tell parameters that yes, the child has to write, child has to talk. Right. So that, and well, thing is that not that he has to, but then see if there is no physically something stopping him, then what is it that is not enabling him to do that, right? So I think we have to find out ways and rules. Very true. And then when we asked them, like when we started going to Urja, like you wouldn't believe that sir first told us that do that remedial sessions first with him, right? In a week's time, he started writing. So it depends on the teachers and how they are talking to him, what techniques they are using, how comfortable he is with him. So all of that, I think, and now he writes. Like just today, I was telling sir that he wrote his entire project book by himself this time. Like this was the first time he did that. So,
fabulous, fabulous, like commendable.
So Urja School has helped us a lot in that. I mean, in a lot of things, but writing is definitely the first thing that, I experienced in like in a very short span of time and looking at the difference. So it was
Yeah. The change coming in so quick is like, whoa. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing.
so he like he was not used to even picking up the pencil and thing. But then he started at least ABCD. Like maybe it was up down all garbled letters, but he started.
Yeah, at least.
That itself was a huge victory at that point of time.
Fabulous. So that brings me to you, sir. We want to know what magic are you doing in Urja school that children who are not picking up the pencil or pen are picking it up and then they're writing their projects. Uh, So please.
So I feel, I mean, if I have to talk about Shardul, it definitely, it's not a silver bullet. It took some time, but connecting to what ma'am said, that when children are in uh, that state of conundrum where you are not, whether why am I not writing, what is stopping me, I don't want to write, there is a reluctance. So at that time what matters is the tone rather than making the child understand the logic of it.
Correct.
So the teachers in Urja have been so patient. They have been so receptive following my approaches. What I have told them, that iske sath ye karenge, iske sath ye karenge.
Oh.
We use a napkin, or maybe writing on the foam, or making him write in the write on the clay, or just doing air writing on his back, and making things more fun based. And the I would say a modicum of effort would actually make the child feel very applauded. Oh wow, we've done so well. So I think that particular thing makes the child feels more motivated. Many a time we also feel that to make certain kids do certain thing, even ignoring them helps.
Correct.
The child will feel that why am I not attended to? Because the child is attended at home, through throughout by the parents. Therapies mein he is just the Kendra Bindu.
Yeah.
And so then here, why am I not being attended? And then he joins the herd. What the others are doing, I have to do. And I think it's also the group effect, the loving effect of his peers around has brings a lot of change in each and every child. So I believe Urja is just not uh, me or my partner Pooja ma'am, but it is also the teacher's effort and the loving energy of all the other children around. And definitely parents like them who shows a lot of trust in us.
But you build that trust for them to be able to, that's nice.
And I think that trust only comes when we get some time from the parent. That okay, hoga, we will try our best to get the desired changes what you are expecting.
So you did mention about the magic that you'll do at Urja's school. I want to know what all are the activities that you'll do at the school.
Right. So Urja, under its wings, have multiple strands. So one being Urja Special School. So there we have children right from the age of 3 years till individuals ranging from 45 years to 50 years. Yeah, who are with special needs. So there is education activity, especially in the school, that is given to children. We also run the NIOS program, which is right from grade 3 till the 12th. So students who are good on their intellect or would show interest in studies would actually crack the NIOS exams and go further in their life. In case if the students do not, who are not academically that inclined, then we start training them vocationally, where we push them towards developing a vocation where we teach a lot of money management skills, office management, um, some pre-cooking skills. We also run a special course on catering, government recognized computer courses, where we strive to make them more and more independent and inclusive in the society. Apart from this, we have young adolescents. So apart from just engaging them on the phone, we run this program which is Me and Mom, where Me and Mama, where they get into a lot of handicraft stuff. So after spending a lot of time there and not on mobile during the afternoons, then their products are showcased in different malls. So here we send the parent, teacher, and the child along. Kids have to go and market about their products, get into a normal interaction with strangers, the customers who comes to their stall. So that's how every single moment there is a strive uh, to make the child more and more a part of the society. That's one. And apart from that, Puja Counseling and Remedial Center. Yes. So where remedial being another strand of it, where we teach children uh, who needs remedial intervention. At the same time, we are also into psychodiagnostics, where we uh, identify children with any kind of challenge, then guide the parent and direct them to the right professionals.
Excellent. Everything covered under one roof, huh?
And one more, we being a child psychologist, I also visit different schools of Mumbai, and deal with children there, meet parents, again direct them to the right places. Teachers being the first point of contact, so therefore we do a lot of teacher sensitization programs where teachers identify children, they call parents, parents come to us, we channelize them in the right way.
So let's delve deep into remedial therapy. How does that work? And who gives remedial therapy? I mean, these are questions that even I have in my mind.
It's very primary to understand that remedial education, as I mentioned before, that it is a bridge between what the child is and what the child is expected to do. These therapies are or should be taken by certified remedial educators or special educators. That's very, very important because they are trained to handle children who are neurodivergent with the different kinds of, with different levels of severity. So when we talk about remedial education, it is very new to the parent that what is this remedical, this is a is it something medical and you are doing it remedical. So because parents would have a semblance of certainty as to what my child is, whether my child will improve or not with the recommendations given by the doctor. So basically, as I mentioned, it is taking care of the academic domain where English, math, functional academics, something that is going to help the child more in his day to day life. Reading being very primary, reading and comprehending the stuff becomes, or it comes to the fore when we take remediation. Also, there are some children who are reluctant to hold the pen. So the teachers in schools would think that he doesn't want to write, or he is very obstinate about holding a pen. But when it comes to understanding that why the child doesn't want to hold, because some children may not like the feel of the pencil or maybe the feel of the pen. They are not that confident enough to understand that whether my brain and my hand would support and make the writing process so easy. Also, the child has had bitter experiences in the past where writing is a kind of a challenge, that what is writing, that why I am supposed to write so much. So this whole thing gets quite subdued and friendly in remedial. So there is it's a one-on-one teaching setup where there is an informal assessment done in the beginning, where the remedial therapist would understand the child's current level by giving him certain um, tests which are based on the curriculum, and identify his level. Based on that, the child would be picked up on the goals that the therapist has to plan. So either it could be a 3-month goal, it could be a 1 week goal or a 1 month goal, or an entire IEP, which is the individualized education program for the plan for the whole year with what materials are needed. So in fact, the parent has the right to ask from the therapist that what is the next goal that you're going to teach my child. The parent may contribute in the process that I want that this is ongoing in the school. Whether the therapist is receptive to add those goals maybe in a different way, adding those as a prerequisite to what the parent is wanting to achieve. So this becomes a one-on-one thing. During this time, different worksheets, different teaching methodologies um, are used in the process where the child feels more comfortable. The child's limitations are embraced. Uh, I think that's very primary.
Yeah.
And then the entire process becomes so joyful that the child starts loving to go to a remedial class. Reading is done more with pictures to begin with. Then gradually we move to the text which are more colored in nature, the bigger font text. Parent is simultaneously advised to carry a small book. So that's how the child inculcates the habit of reading at home. A lot of homework is given to the parent where the parent has to make some flashcards to stick it on the walls, and the words which are very functional, for example the name of the building and name of the friend. So then the child starts reading this and the child automatically gains the confidence, oh now I know to read. Then there are different color codes which are used while reading. Questions are color coded the same way. That's how the comprehension begins. Then the last words are taken into the account while comprehending a step later. And so it's a gradual transit from what the child doesn't know to what the child knows, with a lot of reinforcers in the process, using behavior modification charts, understanding the limitations. Oh, this strategy doesn't work, let's move to the next one. So it's not a set protocols that you have to follow the ABC pattern, but it could be XYZ also.
Oh, correct. As per the needs of the child.
Correct. And so this is one aspect, and there is also something called as an academic remediation, which I also want the parents to understand that when the child is already in the seventh, eighth, or the ninth grade, working and going back to three-letter words or something which is not helpful to the child at this juncture. So there are acceleration methods where the parent would get the school's textbook and the syllabus that the child is going to learn, and the therapist would teach the child with different methods much in advance. So when the topic is introduced in the school, the child is attentive, the child is able to answer all these questions, the child gets a lot of praises from the school, which he's unlikely to get it when he doesn't know the concept. And that's how it also helps this confidence to boost up in school.
That's really amazing because the child will not feel lost and will be able to grasp and is in a better space to do that.
Correct.
Fantastic.
So somewhere a therapist also needs to um keep on reviewing what the child is learning. It should not be the same. So as I mentioned that why parents do not trust the whole remediation process, which goes so long. It is a long process. Because I feel that somewhere the goals are not reviewed, the limitations are not understood. Uh, People stick to that same three-letter words family, the CBC words, and the child not picking up on sounds and how can he read. Maybe there are some children who are very good at their visual memory and they learn sight words even without understanding. So I think that approach, even by the therapist, needs to be changed to make the process more better.
So we did speak about the remedial and the therapies that are done in the Urja school. I want to know from the parent who has experienced it all. So how has Urja school helped you as a parent as well and your child in his development?
So a lot, definitely a lot, because the progress that we see or the difference that we see in him before he was in a different school, and now of course his the last 3 years is just. So he was a very shy child, wouldn't mix up much amongst his peers. Most of all, he used to talk to people older than him or very young kids, but amongst his peers, he did not mix up. So of course, that has improved a lot now. For example, also, taking part in stage functions like annual day functions and all. Previously, he wouldn't do or he wouldn't follow instructions. But now, of course, he is like, sir today only told me that, he's like, he's actually playing a good role in that entire annual day program for whatever his class is putting up. So all of this has obviously not been sudden, right? There has been a lot of work that has been put on by the teachers, and the entire school, the facilitators who are there, the teachers, sir and Puja ma'am also, right? And it has been gradual. it has been something which he is comfortable with. So they made him comfortable in the environment, right? They did the work which he would be, easily he will like that and he will like to follow that. I mean, it's not just studies. Studies, of course, is the main part, but how the study is done, how the kid is encouraged, how he loves to go to school. So all of that is a part of that, right? So teaching him accord the way he will like to learn, right? It's not just studies, but then games, sports are there. There are music, there is dance which is done, there is art which is done. There are different small activities like vocational activities, like non-fire cooking activities which are there, and they're teaching them about money.
Which is
That-
so important.
Yes, which is so important, right? So to actually, so now, like we've come to a stage where I can even send him to a small shop which is right in front of the building and tell him, "Ki, okay, you go and buy this." Right? So it's come to that stage, from a stage where he did not understand anything about it. So I think school has been very, very supportive, and we've seen a lot of improvement, and he loves going to school. I think that is the most important thing of the in the entire thing, right? See that the feeling of loving to go to school, getting he also has a best friend now. So from that time where he never used to interact with kids, to the time now they're talking on the phone to each other. So I think that's very, very amazing and very, very positive. So
Excellent. And I do know he loves yoga
yes.
and he's into sports. So if you could,
So he loves yoga. There are yoga classes in the school also in the timetable once a week. Wow, this is how to success. And then they celebrate yoga day also. And then we do that at home. So that of course we started. Then his father taught him like the small steps. Again in yoga it was not like what they typically call it. Those words are a little difficult for him to understand, right? So his father taught him in the way in the animal name. Like, this is a cat pose. This is dog pose. This is fish pose. So with that, he has started. So every morning he does that entire set of yoga, asanas. He does that yoga asanas every morning before coming to school. And yeah, so he loves to swim and he loves to cycle. So he cycles a lot. So all of those are his favorite activities.
amazing achievements, huh? Excellent, excellent. So we did hear the parents' achievements. So you would love to know about your achievements that you have been uh, that you have achieved in Urja School.
So by God's grace, in fact, I would say it was very hunky dory. Good experiences. I'm very proud to say that my partner has been very instrumental, Pooja ma'am. She's been very, so I take care of the school's academic technical part, and she is maintaining the outdoor work. Where we've had children doing a lot of, so we leave no stones unturned where when it comes to giving social exposure to children along with the achievements that we've had because of this. So there is a Navratri function which we popularly call it as Ratri before Navratri, a night before the actual Navratri begins. Kids who were in their shell before have now come out of all the inhibitions and have started learning and loving to do Garba.
Wow.
Also, of late, they are very instrumental playing different kinds of sports like cricket, or if there is a running race or shot put. So that is one thing where we are trying to match up the pace. Most importantly, I mean, the biggest achievement is we've been aired on the national television program, which is, I think, Dance Divane. Then Super Singer 3, if I am not wrong. These are the programs where my kids were a part of the audience. So they were invited. They got an opportunity to meet the actors around, and that boosted a lot of their confidence. Our primary objective was not, of course, so that gave a very good platform to them, but uh, our objective is to make all the kids be in a lot of crowd, which overwhelms them. uh, there is a lot to deal with a lot of their sensory issues, which automatically get subdued because I have a friend next to me. Okay. And then they were featured in Sitare Zameen Par, Amir Khan's production. And around 38 of my kids were a part of the audience in the movie, the opponent team of the movie, and that boosted their confidence of being actors on the set. So true. So and of course the parents' confidence. I feel that the benefits were manifold. In terms of the parents also had a good time with each other. They bonded well on the set. Kids also learned. In fact, the team took a lot of care by feeding them throughout the shoot and giving them a lot of games to play, etc., etc. But kids also felt very nice that now I am a hero. Yeah, I am. So see, this is somewhere indirectly boosting their self confidence. So a child who doesn't have the confidence to even face a crowd now is confident to talk to anyone. So I'm very proud for all my children in Urja. You call anyone, my child will be able to talk to them. So nice. What an achievement. So I think this is the biggest achievement. To add on a few, we've opened different initiatives, although that didn't work much. But again, the primary objective was to give them exposure. Where it was a bubble at that point in time. Something called as U Mart, which is the, if I'm not wrong, it is the Mumbai's first mart for children with special needs.
Yeah, yes, yes, yes. We had featured this.
Yeah. So there, so we recently have discontinued, but otherwise, it gave a kind of a hope to parents where employment training was a part of the daily affair. Also, we initiated projects like stationery shops for them, a cafe for them, uh, so I would not say achievement on papers or achievement on TV, but somewhere an achievement that made a difference in the child's life uh, was uh, was and is really mandatory.
So true, so true. At least we have tried. You'll have tried. Yes. It's not that you didn't try and you just have that within you. So, tried.
It also gave us a confidence that oh, we can take up this project, we cannot take up this project because it in today's time it costs lakhs of rupees to have even a small project to keep working. True. But at least I now know that my this child is capable of doing something and he's not capable of doing this, but he can do something else. So different shades of child's abilities are somewhere they come up on the surface during the teaching learning process.
Fabulous. Excellent. So, coming to the books, so many parenting books that you have written, sir. थोड़ा तो information हमको भी मिलना चाहिए. So, our audience will definitely benefit from your knowledge. So, we can just take up a few questions from that. First one being, parents misunderstand tantrums and meltdowns. So, how would you address those parents so that they don't misunderstand the children and they address it rightly?
So I believe these two terms are often misconstrued. One, tantrum. So I would put 4 points to this. So one being the intent between these two. So if I'm talking about a behavior problem or a tantrum versus a meltdown. So behavior problem would be more goal oriented versus the one which is not goal oriented. Then if I have to talk about say the cause. So again here the cause is more a demand in nature, and here the cause would be more the environmental thing which has overwhelmed the child for some or the other reason. Third, if I have to take about the control of the whole situation. So here the control is much better because the child's intent is something goal driven, so I want it. And if the parent gets angry, upset, or submits to the child's demand, then the control is much better over something which is not in control. And lastly, if I have to talk about the ending of the whole process, so ending is satisfying here, a quick thing, that I've got it and things are sorted. On the other hand, ending ends on its own time, where the child's senses shut down well, there is a equilibrium maintained to what the child wants to have it, and then it ends. So I believe this is a primary thing which if a parent understands, then they would know the ways and the tactics to handle a tantrum and a meltdown. So meltdown would not need any tactic per se, it only needs time. That my child will pacify on its own, as compared to you are trying to bribe the child, you're trying to be very pedant parent, that I'm being very strict on you and you have to follow this and this in public space you cannot do anything. Doesn't work.
Also, there are cases where children hit, bite. There are bruises that I have seen parents have.
We've undergone a lot.
Yes, you all see it day in and day out. Parents go through it day in and day out. How do parents handle all of that?
It all begins what the parent or what strategy the parent has done when it started. So say for example, if the parent gives up during the episode where the child is undergoing a meltdown and the parent starts giving the child different options. You take this, you take this. Then the child automatically learns it and then he is spoiled for choices.
Correct.
Right? Instead, the parent should understand what caused the meltdown. It's a human tendency where we try to fix the problems, but it is important to fix the source, right? So then, if the parent knows that this particular source has caused a meltdown, the parent has to be extra cautious that this particular source doesn't come in. But you have no control over the environment. So here it is a learning for the parent to systematically desensitize and train the child that in case if there is an identical trigger in the future, then what strategies can you use that the meltdown doesn't happen, right? So I think it is more then there are children who would stim. So stimming, now the decent sciences also say that stimming is normal. It is a way to shut down your brain and feel to come to an equilibrium. But again, during that stimming, if the parent holds the hands of the child and the parent pushes the child, that is going to cause more harm than good. So I think here psychoeducating the parent is very primary, that you cannot expect a behavior that you want.
Correct.
It is the child behavior that he will display. Gradually you modify what the way you want, keeping into mind the society that you are coming from and you are wanting the child to follow according to the norms of the society. We've had parents who give a damn about how the child will behave in the society. They would allow the meltdown to pass very softly and very gradually. And then they would say, "Ho gaya, welcome." Right? I think this is a very mature way of dealing with it. But what we are concerned, what the people will think around. So, oh, he's mad. People will think he's mad. That's his way of dealing with things. Maybe you can gradually, through some behavioral therapies and through some behavioral approaches, you can try to mold and pacify the intensity of this behavior.
But don't try to suppress it at that point of time. Let it pass.
Otherwise, then you have asked the child not to push or not to shout or not to cry loudly. Then the immediate thing is the child is going to bite himself. And then he's learned it that this is something that helps me at this juncture. So let me repeat it the next time.
One leading to another. Also, if you could give tips to parents, what they can do during meltdown?
One simple tip that I would like to give the parent is be calm yourself and you will see that your child is calming down. Because the parent's body language itself makes the child hyper. I always feel that parenting plays a very important role. Whichever child you are dealing with, a neurotypical or a neurodivergent, end of the day, it is your personality that shapes up the child.
So, ma'am, we did speak about meltdowns and tantrums. Sir gave us a lot of insights. You, as a parent, how do you handle it? And in the first place, how do you identify both?
So, of course, in the beginning, I was not able to identify. And whenever he would start crying or shouting or throwing about his hands and sleeping on the road, right? So, that time, like most parents, I think I would just give him what he wants, just to, could take that time away. But then slowly, when I started reading, researching, talking to people, then I came to know that there is this thing called meltdown, which is something which is very typical to kids like not to kids like my son, right? So then, of course, then I understood that it will happen only because in certain circumstances, and then I started understanding what those circumstances might be. Like loud noise, he doesn't like that. Loud noise, very loud, like loudspeakers or some DJ that is playing. He's very uncomfortable with that, right? Or somebody like during Diwali festivals, for example, loud bombs and all that. So that is something he's uncomfortable. At that time, if he's doing something like this, then that's like a genuine issue, right? Again, he's very much focused on schedules, right? So this thing after this thing after this thing has to be done in that way. Like if number 5 replaces number 6, then we will, go on. So those certain things. So then I understood that, okay, this has to be done in this way. I mean, of course, it can't be a lifelong habit. Sometimes we'll have to take that path to unlearn that, 6 can come before 5 sometimes, right? But for that moment, this is the way in which needs to be done. So to curb that meltdown, that schedule is being followed. Okay. Of course, slowly I started putting into place, explaining to him that sometimes you will not get all these things in a line, right? But then that is gradual process. After understanding, after observing his reaction to certain things, I have now understood what his triggers can be, right? And those triggers I try and kind of avoid wherever possible, right? Especially I just tell him before preempting, right? Before going to outside somewhere. Okay, this is where we are going. I'll show him a picture. This is where we are going. These are the people. If to a relative's house, suppose these are the people you're going to meet over there. This is your kaka. This is your kaki. This is whoever it is you're going to meet, right? They're having some kids, so these kids are of your age. They go to school like you. This is what you have to talk to them. This is what you should not say, or should say. So things like that. I mean, not very detailed, but at least some things which will kind of enable prepare him mentally that this is how it is done. Of course, in the first time, it is not successful. You have to do it. Have a lot of patience and have that mental readiness in myself that everything is not going to go as per what I have thought, right? And if a meltdown happens even then in a public space, just like like sir said, let that pass. Because at that point of time, if you do anything else or try to calm him down also or shout, whatever will not work. If it's that kind of an issue, it does not work, right? So you have to let it pass off, or at the most, take him, hug him at that point of time, say, okay, this is fine, I'm there for you. No, just let it go. Okay, so then after he calms down, it's fine. But of course, off late, that meltdowns have become very less because we know how to identify the triggers now. We know how to, and he's also started understanding as he's growing up. Tantrums, of course, like that every mother, I guess, do the reason for the tantrum, right? So tantrums is something like, okay, you have to study. I don't want to study. I'll start shouting and screaming. I'll start pulling my whatever. Right? So that is a tantrum. So for a tantrum, it's like, no, if you have to study, you have to study. Okay. Otherwise, if you don't study, you're not going to play. I mean, so tantrums is like complete never giving in to tantrums, because if you give in once, you give in twice, that will become a habit. Right? So at that point of time, most important thing which again I have learned over a period of time is that if there is a tantrum happening, be non-responsive, like keep a very blank face, do not show any emotions. Okay, you're shouting, shout. You want to shout half an hour, shout half an hour. Black face, shout for half an hour. You will get tired, your throat will get, painful, you'll stop shouting. You are not getting what you want. Oh. It had to be like that. And I've learned this over a period of time, right? Because if I give in to a tantrum, कि 15 minute हो गए, आजू बाजू के लोग चिल्लाने लगे, क्यों चिल्ला रहे? I mean, and that has happened to me. People are saying, I say shouting. Yeah, but that's fine. Let people say things. I know my kid, I have to improve his things, right? I want him to grow in life. So I have to face this. And I have to tell him also how there has to be faced. Right? So tantrums is a very this thing. When I know it is for some reason or avoid something. Mostly for more than getting something, it is more than avoiding something. So, like which he doesn't want to do. Then again, to overcome those tantrums, again that same thing is there, kind of ki, okay, if you do this, if you're sitting with the teacher for half an hour, after that you'll go out to play. For like, if you're going every day for half an hour, you go for 45 minutes today. That way. So that helps. That definitely helps. But yeah, understanding and differentiating between the two,
Is
that
important.
that's very important, and that takes time. But then over the period of time, we do, I mean, with experience, understanding how the child is reacting also, right? Sometimes you'll be like so overwhelmed for no reason at all. If he starts crying or shouting, or maybe not crying and shouting also, becoming suddenly quiet, or like doing something suddenly go off, and so cats, like very recently happened, the cats were crying. Like cats cry like babies, right? Sometimes we can hear that.
Correct.
So he was suddenly very, upset or very kind of. So why was that happening? We did not understand it first. Then I realized, okay, it's happening 2 or 3 times when it happened. Okay, because of this sound, he's getting irritated. So even if he's doing something at that point of time, suddenly he'll leave that and he like, So those are things which are not in our control. Right? At that point of time, we just have to give him his space, or at least, maybe cuddle him, hug him, say that, okay, this is something which is beyond our button. So that.
So these identifications that the parents have to do is really, really crucial, and act accordingly.